So, sir, immediately upon the shots being fired, our snipers.
I know that, but when did they first see him? You got a guy lying on a roof.
Yeah.
You got snipers in an elevated position. They can look down on the roof. You got the guy lying there with a gun pointed at the former president of the United States. And they shot him. Good for them.
Give me a sound check.
He's now dead as Woodrow Wilson, and that's a good thing. I'm sorry. God forgive me, but it's a good thing. But when did the snipers first see him?
As soon as he presented himself as a target and a threat to the president, sir.
And when was that?
He fires initially a volley. I believe it was 3 shots.
No, he fired at 6:12 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the first shot.
So within 15.5 seconds of the first shot, he's
Here's what
neutralized.
people are asking.
Yes, sir.
He was up, Crooks was up there. The snipers at some point saw him,
Yes, sir.
our snipers, because they killed him.
Yes, sir.
When did they first see him? It has been reported repeatedly that the snipers first saw him 20 minutes before. That's more than a quarter in an NFL football game.
Yes, sir.
You don't know the answer?
So
to
I
that?
do know the answer, sir. I'm telling you that.
What is the answer?
No,
When
they did not see him. They only
They never saw him.
No, sir.
Well,
They did not.
how could they not see the guy? How could they not see him? They're in an elevated position. They're checking rooftops. They're looking around.
Yes, sir.
There's 2 government snipers. How could they not see him? There he was, big as Dallas, lying there with a gun, pointed at the president. How could they not see him?
I believe he was obscured by that roof, sir. He did not pop up.
The roof is flat with ridges.
He's below the line where they would have seen him, sir. There is he did have concealment. I'm not going to say it's cover. He did have concealment, and then ultimately gets into firing position and fires. And within 15.5 seconds of his first shot, he's neutralized.
I've gone way over. You gentlemen need to answer these questions. Mr. Deputy Director, get me that information about those lawsuits.
Senator Rosen, you recognize for your questions.
Thank you, Chair Peters, and Ranking Member Paul for holding this important hearing on the attempted assassination of former President Trump. I am grateful for everyone's service and dedication. However, it's critical that this committee get to the bottom of what happened that day so that we can prevent any future catastrophic security failures and ensure that nothing like this happens again. And so, Director Rowe, given that the event took place in a rural area, we've talked a lot about connectivity issues. Was law enforcement at a disadvantage due to a lack of or limited connectivity? And why has the Secret Service not adopted a dedicated satellite-enabled Wi-Fi connection, which would facilitate integrated communication, enable device connectivity to include drones, and allowing for the sharing of real-time intelligence?
So, Senator, thank you for that question. So, based on what I've seen, that radio connectivity, cellular was an issue that day. With respect to the satellite broadband, that is something that I've tasked our CIO, and then we're getting some support from the Department of Homeland Security on. So we will start to leverage whatever asset we have to ensure that connectivity.
Well, I can tell you that we have those SEER ratings in Homeland Security, those special event ratings that we have for things like the Super Bowl. We have it a lot in Las Vegas, and they do bring these mobile units to be sure that we have all the dedicated Wi-Fi cell service and integration that is absolutely necessary for securing a huge event. And so I look forward to hearing about that. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about intelligence for lone wolf actors, because although we have not been made aware of any specific intelligence the Secret Service or others had in the shooter before the event, we do know that we have intel on Iranian threats against the former president. And so again, Acting Director Rowe, could you talk to us about how you utilize intelligence collection as a way of mitigating threats from state actors like Iran compared to what you do, compared to lone wolf actors, what it seems to be like the attempted assassin that we have here in Crooks. And so, and what are the specific challenges with the intelligence collection as a mitigation tool against lone wolf actors versus state actors.
So Senator, first, let me preface by saying the Secret Service is not a member of the intelligence community. However, we are their biggest consumers of information, and we receive that information regularly, especially as it pertains to our protective mission and the people that we protect. We have embeds with the FBI through their National Joint Terrorism Task Forces. Our agents are basically embeds and are able to not only receive information, but also follow up on investigations that may have a nexus or a direction of interest towards one of our protectees. We have an excellent working relationship with the FBI. We have an excellent working relationship with the intelligence community. We are not collectors. We are consumers of finished analytic products that the intelligence community of the FBI produces. We ingest them, and then we use that to adjust our protective posture. And we do this daily, weekly, all of the time. And it's not only for protectees, but also the events and sites that we protect on a permanent or temporary basis.
Evasive.
With respect to largely a lot of the people that come to our attention, in the case of the assailant, to me, as I overlay him over top of, say, John Hinckley, who tried to shoot President Reagan, I see an individual based on information that I have now, some of the great work that the FBI has done. We have an individual who's a loner. We have an individual who was focused on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Hinckley traveled the 80 campaign, and we know that he followed President Carter. It just, on March of 81, he happened to show up in Washington, D.C., and he saw an opportunity to try to attack President Reagan. So when it comes to the Secret Service, and 1981 was a watershed moment for us. We have people that are, for whatever reason, fixated on carrying out an attack against the President of the United States or one of our protectees. And in this instance, you have the assailant who was a loner. Obviously, he was researching. He had researched the Democratic National Convention. He had researched and Googled or used a search engine about the president, the former president. And so I think he had moved towards an idea that he was going to try to do something. And so when I look at this, we don't have a challenge with the FBI or the intelligence community. I think what we always try to wrestle with is trying to line up and see people as they're starting to head down a pathway towards violence. And it's something that we have spent a lot of time and resources in with our National Threat Assessment Center to try to gain a better understanding so that we can help our agents in the field as they're doing these protective intelligence cases and these investigations to be able to make a determination, is somebody genuinely a threat, or do they need mental health, or do they need some other type of service?
Thank you. I appreciate that. My time's over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Cotton, you're recognized for your questions.
At the outset, I want to express, as many members have, as President Trump did, the admiration and respect for the bravery and skill of the officers who were on site that day, Secret Service officers, as well as all the local law enforcement. As it happened, my 9-year-old son was watching with me that afternoon, and it was hard to get him to turn away from it. And he asked who all those men and women were who jumped on Mr. Trump. And I said, in layman's terms, those are his bodyguards. And he said, what are they doing? I said, they're protecting him from a bullet. And he said, actually? And I said, yes. He said, for real? And I said, yes. And it was hard for him to process that. But as a reminder, I told him that there are men and women in the Secret Service and law enforcement and the military who are willing to die for our country. And it's an important lesson, I think, that everyone should take away from this, that you had very brave men and women on the ground there who were doing their job to protect this country, to protect a former president and a nominee for president, as they do every day for so many other protectees. Obviously, there were failures in the planning and preparation for this event. Mr. Rowe, we've heard that the shooter had a golf rangefinder. Was that not on the list of prohibited items at an event like this?
Currently, it is not on the list of prohibitive items, but we're going to make that change, Senator.
John Kennedy can't get into an LSU football game with a flask.
Yeah, I can.
Well, he probably can, but he's not supposed to. It just seems like common sense that you don't need a laser rangefinder at an event like this. And it feels like that a lot of that was just the lack of common sense being exercised. Are officers not empowered on the front line to use common sense to say, like, if a guy has a laser rangefinder, he should be detained or at least stopped and asked why he's carrying it around. If you have a building like this that's not secure from 150 meters away, someone, even the front line, lowest level, most junior officer should be able to kind of like send up the red flag immediately and say, like, we need to halt everything right now and figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, do officers not feel empowered to use that kind of
So
common sense?
I would hope they would, Senator. I can tell you from our uniform division officers that run our magnetometer screening, they do a tremendous job. And even though something may or may not be on the prohibitive items list, they are well-trained and they do exercise that good common sense.
And you want this
I want
important
them.
message. Okay, I want every one of your officers all around the country to hear that their acting director wants them to exercise common sense. It doesn't have to be policy or protocol or procedure. They should exercise common sense. Thank you for that. So it was reported right before Ms. Cheadle's hearing last week that, in fact, President Trump's detail had requested more resources and those had been denied. She said that she did not deny those resources. You've testified this morning that you did not either. So who did? I mean, the Secret Service is not the post office. It's not this vast bureaucracy.
Right.
Like, I'm not surprised to hear that you knew the counter sniper. It's a small agency and you have a lot of career officers. Like, surely you've gotten to the bottom by now of on whose desk this request landed and who denied it.
So Senator, sometimes when they make a request, they may not have the asset available. For example, there may be, instead of, the detail may say, hey, we want 15 magnetometers. Well, we'll look at it based on what the event size, we'll say, hey, listen, we're going to send 10 based on our protocols of screening so many. We have a flow rate of how many people we can put through. When it comes to a counter sniper or something like that, because I know that's been the subject of some media reporting where they have requested counter snipers. We do have a finite number of counter snipers. And so what we try to do is if we cannot fill that asset, and that's where we'll say, hey, we can't fill this assignment. However, through the field office, they will use local law enforcement resources. And so in those situations, for example, in the one that has been the subject of a lot of reporting with Pickens, South Carolina, they in fact did use local assets to be able to do that. And there were 3 counter sniper teams. One of them was formerly with the Secret Service Uniform Division. And so they actually used the same practices that we use. So it's
This
not that there
guy's
was
a
a
bunch of
drop
doublespeak
in the capability.
BS.
They actually use the best practices that we would
He's
use.
very
So
skilled
the
at
asset
faking
may be denied
answers.
by Secret Service between the
We're
war
talking
room
about
and that
a
conversation with the
particular
detail in the
event.
field.
I don't wanna
but
hear what
it
happens
doesn't
all the
equate
time.
to a vulnerability or a gap.
Okay, one final question about the Iran threat. As you know, Iran
won't be
made
giving
credible
names,
threats
will
against
they?
several former Trump administration officials, many of whom still have government-provided security details to this day. Ms. Cheadle removed Secret Service protection from Robert O'Brien last year. Were you involved in that decision?
So Senator, he was a memorandum protectee, meaning that the president authorized protection for him. We do not weigh in on who gets protection.
Why, so you're still protecting some others, I won't reveal their names, but you are still protecting others, and other personal security offices in the federal government are protecting others, other officials, I won't reveal their names. Like, who made the decision that Robert O'Brien no longer needed a security detail, despite Iran's ongoing credible threats?
So I can tell you, sir, it wasn't the Secret Service. We don't factor into that
And
decision.
can you take a look at why that happened now that you're in charge and consider the possibility that he might still need that protection, given all of his counterparts in the Trump
We do
administration
need
still
to
have
know this
protection?
kid's
I will do so,
motivation.
Senator.
And
I'm just,
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Go
It
ahead.
is
I would say, like,
possible
again,
he
I'm not
had
gonna
the
reveal
money. He lived at
the
home.
protective details, but I'm pretty confident that
He
the
had a
agency
job.
can get this done. And I think it needs to get done if you look at the kind of ongoing threats that he and all these others face.
I will, sir. And-
Despite all the
He didn't
resource
seem to
constraints
be
we
a
talked about
drug
today,
addict
he's not
or an
the president of the
alcoholic.
United States. He doesn't have an 18-car motorcade, nor do any of the others. I think he needs that protective detail. And now that you're in
He was a
charge, I'm
porn
asking you to
addict.
take a new look at that and also talk to your supervisors inside the department about whether you can spare
Doesn't have to be
just that
expensive.
small, limited amount of resources, okay?
Senator Welch, you're recognized for your
I
question.
will, sir.
Thank you very much. You know, there's, first of all, thank you both for the
I'm sick of them
tremendous work you
thanking these
do.
people. Get down to
And for all the
business.
folks behind you and under you, so thank you for that. I kind of
You're
want to
not
follow
that
up a little
brave.
bit on Senator Cotton.
You're
You
politically
know, there's three issues that
misaligned.
have been raised. One is the selection of who gets protection, and you've addressed that just now. The other is whether it's a budget issue, which I don't necessarily think it is. But then there's the operational question. Was this an operational failure? And it appears to me that's where the focus should be. And one of the issues on the operations is the capacity of people who are part of the team, both Secret Service and also the local law enforcement, their capacity to act on what they see. And this is what Senator Cotton, I think, was talking about
Diplomacy
with
and
common
agenda.
sense. You know, you mentioned that the sniper was authorized immediately to act. He wasn't checking in with anyone, right? And he took out the shooter as quickly as he could. But according to the timeline, you had local law enforcement captured 2 photographs of the shooter at 5:10. At 5:32, local law enforcement officers spot a suspicious person who turned out to be the shooter with a phone and a rangefinder. At 5:46, the alert was so significant that snipers text photo of the shooter from where he was initially spotted to the USS lead sniper. I mean, how is it that where you had these experienced law enforcement people who understood the gravity of the responsibility of protecting the presidential candidate, the former president, none of these actionable observations resulted in action? I'll direct that first to you, Deputy Director Abate.
Thank you, Senator. From the FBI standpoint, we're simply collecting the facts. We've interviewed most of the officers. Now we'll end up interviewing all of them.
Okay,
along
we'll
with
go to
Secret Service
Assistant Director
personnel.
or Acting Director Rowe.
So on that, Senator, I think there was a sense of this guy is standing out, and that's why he came to the attention of local law enforcement.
No, I get that. That's my point.
Right.
He did stand out,
Correct.
but nothing happened. I
Well,
mean,
they
there
were-
were alerts,
There were
but there
alerts.
was like, you've got somebody suspicious. Why didn't somebody go interact with the suspicious person, like right away?
And they were attempting to locate him. I can't answer that question as to why, if they took a picture of him and they thought he was unusual, suspicious, not acting normal, why there wasn't. And I think, again, there was probably an assumption on the part of that officer that took that picture that, oh, some uniform or somebody will go eventually and walk up to this.
Well, see, that's what seems like an operational failure. Somebody else will do it. So is the responsibility of an officer to alert some other officer that they think somebody might be suspicious, or the first officer who sees a suspicious person can take the next step to actually engage that person or talk to someone very, very close to it and say, engage that person. And this guy was wandering around for quite a while.
He was. I can't put myself in the mind of that officer.
I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking, this is operationally, how does the process work? Okay, so that is the job of the leaders as opposed to the officers. Are they empowered to act immediately upon the observation of someone who looks very suspicious, particularly when they've got the rangefinder? They were in a place where it really wasn't about seeing the rally. It was, as we see, it was a place where you get a good view of former President Trump. I mean, that is a leadership issue, right?
So Senator, that officer didn't work for me. That was a state and local officer that made that observation, took that picture. So I can tell you from the Secret Service perspective, and we do this routinely, is that when people come to our attention, We locate them, we go up, we do a field interview, or we try
Okay.
to do a
All right,
consensual
That's the
encounter.
operational thing I'm talking about. If you do it within Secret Service, you all are in charge. And relying on local law enforcement assets. Those folks, and they did their job here up to a point where they identified this person, passed information along, but nobody acted. The empowerment to that local officer, I would think, has to come, be transmitted through the Secret Service, maybe in the earlier briefings, but, where you say, folks, you see somebody suspicious, you engage that suspicious person.
I don't disagree, Senator, and it goes back to my comments at the beginning of the hearing that we need to be very direct to our local law enforcement counterparts so that they understand exactly what their expectations.
I yield back. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tillis, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abate, Mr. Rowe, thank you for being here. Mr. Rowe, do you have a picture? I was watching your testimony earlier. Do you have a photograph of the vantage point from the Secret Service snipers?
I do. I believe that's C.
And there were two, is that correct?
Yes, sir, stage left and stage right.
Okay, and I don't know if you have a vantage point of both of them or not. I know you had one for the one who ultimately shot the,
That's the vantage point of the sniper who neutralized the assailant.
okay. Well, is it a similar vantage point for the other? Would they have also been impaired in terms of actually seeing him until he popped his head up?
So the sniper on the stage right side,
Yeah.
Senator, they had an obstructive view because of that tree.
They had an obstructive view. Okay,
Yeah.
so well, the one thing, this discussion that I don't believe that a sniper saw someone on the roof 20 minutes before just doesn't make sense to me. It sounds like the one who took the shot probably saw him for the first time about a split second before he pulled the trigger. Is that?
That's my assessment, Senator.
Well, first off, I'd like to clarify the requests that have been made of a lot of people so that we get the information in a good form. I think it would be helpful, at least all the way back to, I think, November 5th of 2022, I believe, when President Trump announced that he was running for reelection. I think it'd be helpful if we could just get a matrix of any request for additional security, the resolution of that request. Was it honored? Was it denied? Was it downsized? If you could give us that, I think that that's going to be the best way versus giving us mounds and mounds of paper. If you can do that, I know you're looking at the same thing. I've heard from you that any subsequent requests for field requests are being honored. I believe that that's true. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm more worried about the 24 to 30 seconds between the time I believe local law enforcement officer was hoisted on the shoulders of another police officer, saw a person armed less than 200 yards away from the president, who I believe jumped down. What happened in those 24 or 30 seconds? I mean, obviously, there's no such thing as a panic button. The first thing you'd think is you had panic, you cover the president, get him off stage. None of that happened. What happened? Is it just, did I hear a text message? What actually happened in the 30 seconds where a law enforcement officer knew that a gun was pointed in the direction of the president from a fairly short range? What actually did those folks who did have knowledge of exactly what was happening and could probably infer what was about to happen, what did they do? And Mr. Abate or Mr. Rowe, either one, based on your interviews.
Thank you, Senator. From the interviews, the officers in the immediate vicinity were operating with urgency at that point to get to this person, but he was on the roof. The officer who had looked over the edge, based on what I've been told, the shooter turned toward him with the rifle. That's what the officer observed. So he was under threat himself in that second. So he had to retreat and step down and get back to the ground in order to protect himself and keep him safe from potential rifle fire. But once he got to the ground, along with other officers, there were Butler County local officers, Pennsylvania State Police. They were moving around trying to
I think
find someone to get to this
clearly
guy.
we've got an operational problem here because we had more than 20 seconds to have somehow cut through all the crap and the communications, whatever impediments there were, have to be removed. I mean, it's pretty clear to me. First off, that law enforcement officer, I love law enforcement. I wear the back of the blue pin every day. They do great work. Secret Service did phenomenal work on the stage. but they failed because their job is to protect the public. And they needed to put themselves in harm's way to stop him. Now, I'll let the interviews go through, but there was a massive failure. There were at least 2 law enforcement officers that knew a guy was about to pull the trigger at the president. And, you know, I'm just not really happy with the fact that we couldn't have communicated, covered President Trump and tried to secure the situation. I'm going to let the investigation go through, but I think it's go forward. I think it's very important to point out that we can't let a scenario go in the future where 20 seconds can lapse when a law enforcement officer within 2 football fields of a former president of the United States has material knowledge that somebody's about to get shot at on stage, and we don't have instantaneous response. You know, in the old days, maybe you just shoot a gun in the air. I know for a lot of reasons why they didn't do that, but there had to be some way to actually diffuse that situation. It didn't happen on July the 13th. I just want to end by saying, Mr. Rowe, I think you've been forthcoming in your answers. I know you're frustrated. I've seen you twice now. You're clearly embarrassed by what happened. You don't think there's any reasonable explanation. And to my colleagues who are worried about communications, they should spend times in their local government and state legislatures to understand just how bad communication is between law enforcement and first responders. We need to invest in this infrastructure. That was also a part of the failure. But if you can please get to me and get to this committee a chronology of requests, accepted, denied, and the reasons for, I think that's going to be very helpful.
I will, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Blackburn, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of you for your patience and for being here today. Director Rowe, I want to come to you first because a counter sniper has decided to speak out about the culture at your agency, and I think it is very telling. And he sent an email, and I'm going to quote from that. If this agency needs to change, and if not now, when? The next assassination in 30 days? But here's what I want to talk with you about, because in this email, he says, and I'm quoting again, the motto of the USSS is CYA. And every supervisor is doing it now. That's the end of his quote. So you're the guy in charge. And you're one of those supervisors. You've been a career guy there at the Secret Service. The public has lost trust in the ability to execute the mission, to protect. And I want to know how you feel about the fact that employees in your agency are worried about covering their behind and not worried about protecting a former president.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm hurt by that email, but not in the way you think I'm saying it. I'm hurt because my people are hurting right now. We need them.
Then why did somebody delete the email?
I'll get back to you on that,
The
Senator.
agency deleted the email.
But like, may I address your question?
Yes,
And
please.
I will get back to you
Please.
as to whether
Yes.
the email was deleted or not. My agency is hurting. Emotions are raw. I actually want to hear more from that UD officer, that technician. In his email, he referenced that he had spent time serving our nation as a United States Marine, that he is a 20-year professional of the Secret Service. I am committed to being a change agent, meaning I am committed to reviewing some of these things. I looked at the points in his email very quickly. I saw it as I was on my way over here this morning. I want to have further conversations, not only with him,
Let
but
me-
also the counter
if
sniper
I may
supervisors.
step back in, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you want to talk with him. What about other whistleblowers? What about this culture? Are you going to allow these whistleblowers to speak out? Because it is troublesome if somebody went into the server and deleted that email. I would hope you will get to the bottom of that and be able to provide some answers. Because this is, as you have heard from both sides, this is a situation that cannot be allowed to happen again,
Yes, ma'am.
ever. Mr. Abate, and am I saying your name properly? We've heard it pronounced three different ways today in the hearing.
Abate, Senator.
Abate, okay.
Thank you.
You had mentioned a social media account that espoused anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic views, but you did not say what platform that was on and what the username was. And this is Crooks that we're discussing.
Yes, Senator, that's correct. I didn't want to comment on it because we haven't fully confirmed yet, and I thought that as soon as we confirm and certify,
Would
I
you
will
supply
provide
that?
that to you.
And
Absolutely.
also the age at which he had those feelings. And then we understand that the Gab account is pro-immigration, pro-lockdown, leftist views. Is that accurate?
I haven't seen it directly, but I believe from what I've been told, that is accurate. With the Gab account, we're also, though that's been publicly revealed through the CIO and other things, we're still working to certify and verify that that's his account also. But it does have differing points of view, it would appear.
Okay. And what age? And how fresh is that Gab account?
The Gab account, based on my recollection, the comments in there or the messaging is from about 2021, I believe.
Okay. And the other preceded that? Maybe he was age 14?
Yes, Senator. The other account that we talked about was in the 2019-2020 timeframe. So it would have been in the couple years right before the Gab
Right
messaging.
before that.
Yes.
Are there other accounts that you all are currently verifying and receiving information from?
We are. We've, as I mentioned, we've issued a bunch of legal process, and we're still awaiting returns from a number of the companies, to include other social media companies as well.
Okay. Well, my time has expired. Thank you for your patience today. Thank you for the information. We look forward to getting more information. And Director Rowe, we are going to hold you to being a change agent because things at the Secret Service absolutely have to change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I want to thank our witnesses for your testimony here today. Certainly what happened on July 13th could and should have been prevented from what I have heard today. I'm certainly grateful to our witnesses for their candid answers and for helping to provide additional clarity and new information about the circumstances surrounding this attack. Acting Director Rowe, some of what you have said today conflicts with information and accounts that we have received from local law enforcement that we've had the opportunity to talk with. They have been voluntarily and I will say expeditiously cooperating with our bipartisan investigation, which we certainly appreciate. But we now need to speak with Secret Service agents directly, who are directly involved.
Good question, Barbara. Why don't they
And I
bring
would say
the
that you need
sniper
to make them available as soon as possible. Those interviews can't start weeks from now or months from now. Time is of the essence when memories are fresh and you can get the information that is most important to us. So my question for you as we wrap up this hearing, Acting Director Rowe, will you commit to having those agents available for this committee to interview as soon as possible in a matter of days, not weeks, matter of days?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Certainly the American people deserve to know what went wrong and they deserve accountability for those security failures. And as we continue our bipartisan investigation into security failures that day and any underlying systemic issues, we'll continue working to follow the facts, get clear answers, and make important recommendations
money,
to ensure
too,
that
right?
a security failure like this never happens again. The hearing record will remain open for 15 days until 5 p.m. on August 14th, 2024. For the submission of statements and for the questions for the record, this hearing is now adjourned.
Wow. All righty then. So So I came in a little bit late to this meeting, but that didn't seem to matter because it was much of the same, lies and subterfuge and all that fun. Sorry, I've just been taking my sun bath in my Wonder Woman costume. I'm Wonder Woman today. Anyway, thank you guys for watching with me. I know it's hard to watch, but it's important that we do watch and listen. And what was the most important thing to come out of this meeting? I can tell you. I know what I'm going to start researching. That is the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page settlement with the FBI. Stay tuned. I'm going to go check on that. All right, you guys. Well, ciao for now. Today is actually a super, super exciting day because today is the day that I became an actual bona fide book publisher. We'll talk more about that later as well. But right now, I got to get a shower. I gotta go trussy up or whatever. And I will see you guys on my next beach report. So, arrivederci. Ciao for now. Have a great day.